Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Issues of faith, race and identity are dominating the closing stages of the mayoral campaign. Yes, less than a week to go. And Labour's candidate Sadiq Khan today admits that the row which blew up over Ken Livingstone's comments this week could cost him support, especially among Jewish voters in the capital. But the Conservative candidate Zac Goldsmith is having difficulty shaking off the claim that this has been one of the nastiest campaigns in recent history. We'll talk to him in a moment after Andrew Cryan reports.
A huge turnout for Boris Johnson in Bexley helped the Conservatives win City Hall in both of the last two mayoral elections. So, with just days to go, where better for their candidate this year, Zac Goldsmith, to try and get out the vote.
Now, before this election campaign, Zac Goldsmith was probably best known as an environmental campaigner. He used to edit a magazine called The Ecologist and made his name as an MP, opposing the expansion of Heathrow Airport. But those aren't the issues that this election is really being fought on at all.
I'm standing to build more homes to help Londoners earning average incomes get the keys to their first home. I'm going to protect the transport budget to keep London moving, but also to keep London growing. I'm going to make sure London is safe. I'll give the police the tools, the backing and the resources they need to keep us safe.
On housing, he says he wants to build 50,000 new homes a year and make sure that Londoners get what he calls first chance to buy them. He's promised to freeze council tax, but won't make a similar promise on transport fares, saying it's vital that the capital gets the new infrastructure that it needs. But at West Ham Football Club this week, for an event for show races and the red card, his Labour rival Sadiq Khan told us he thought Zac Goldsmith's plan for Londoners was one we couldn't afford.
We've had for the last 8 years a Conservative mayor, for the last 6 years a Conservative Prime Minister, and it's not working for London. Londoners are being priced out of our city because of the Tory housing crisis. Fares have gone through the roof. We pay the most expensive public transport fares in all of Europe, and it's quite clear Zac would accept TfL's plans to increase the fares by a further 17%.
Now, Zac Goldsmith has always said that he wants to fight a positive campaign that focuses on issues and not personalities. But according to lots of people, actually what he's done is used the Conservative Party machine to attack his rival, Sadiq Khan.
In particular, they say that he's spoken at the same events as Islamic extremists. And in his own words, the Labour candidate has said that when he worked as a human rights lawyer, he represented unsavoury characters.
We need a better explanation from the Labour candidate of what he's been doing in seeming to support these characters.
But that line of attack has drawn criticism, even from Conservatives. The veteran political journalist Peter Oborne is a lifelong Tory, but says the nature of Zac's campaign will mean he's voting Labour for the first time this week.
Sadiq Khan is as mainstream as you come. He fights anti-Semitism. He voted for same-sex marriage. He's against extremism, and he's being portrayed as some untrustworthy radical in the literature of Zac Goldsmith. Ask this question. If you can't vote for Sadiq Khan as a Muslim elected leader, what Muslim is there that you ever can vote for? And that's a very worrying thing. This is why this is a very important election. It's very important that Londoners vote out Zac Goldsmith and his disgusting campaign.
There's also been criticism of Zac Goldsmith's leaflets, some of which have seemingly targeted specific religious groups, like Hindus. Other leaflets called Sadiq Khan a radical, which was seen by some as a slur on his Islamic faith.
It's very obvious what I was referring to when I described him as a radical candidate, as part of a radical process that has enveloped the Labour Party and taken our politics in an extraordinary direction. We have now an opposition party which is more extreme than at any time in my lifetime.
But is Sadiq Khan really standing on a radical platform? When compared to Zac Goldsmith's own one-page summary of his policies, it appears to be almost the same offer.
Looking at the one-page policy platform, it's amazing how similar it is to Sadiq Khan's. The only real difference is that Zac Goldsmith's promising no council tax increase, whereas Sadiq Khan is promising no fares increase on TfL's system. Other than that, it's almost the same platform.
But perhaps the biggest question that will be answered this week is whether Zac Goldsmith's approach will be enough to persuade enough of his supporters to vote and make him the next Mayor of London.
Welcome, Zac Goldsmith. Let's just talk about the whole campaign first. A few years ago, you said in a newspaper interview that the idea of you standing for mayor would be like a suicide mission. Is that how it's proving? Much more difficult than you anticipated?
It is a completely new experience for me, obviously. It couldn't be more different than fighting a constituency election where you meet everyone, you talk to everyone. Anyone who wants to ask you questions can. This is a big city, 8.5 million people, £600 billion economy, 5.8 million voters. It's huge. So it's a very different campaign. But it's been a magnificent experience for me, and I feel very positive about the campaign. We've only got 3 days to go, but it is. I feel that the more public meetings I do, the more people I talk to, the greater the momentum is in the right direction. That's the experience on the ground, and I hope that takes me over the line on May the 5th. But it's going to be a challenge, of course.
Let's put something else, because I was quite struck by this as well. I think people have had enough of white male Etonians. I'm not sure my chances would be very high. Is that also being proved by this campaign? You haven't really found the pulse of the capital, and you don't look like the capital.
I don't agree with that at all. What does the capital look like? It's the most diverse city in the world, or one of. It is, and that is the strength of Greater London. That's why London is the greatest city in the world. Strip away that diversity, London would be a very pale imitation of what it is. So there is no one person who can capture London. By definition, you can't stand on that basis. But the comments I made that you're quoting, I mean, they were heartfelt comments. If you know, I forget when, 2, 3, 4 years ago, the standing for mayor was not even close to being on my radar. I was in the middle of
things changed. Let me just put this
big campaigns.
Alice Thompson, Conservative columnist, says Goldsmith is unencumbered by many principles, but fails to convince us that he wants to be in City Hall. He doesn't look as if he cares whether he wins or not. So that's actually a stylistic thing. It's a sense of leadership thing. It's a sense of you're not convincing anyone that you could actually lead that city.
Unencumbered by principles is an odd thing to say. I mean, I can be accused of many things, as any politician can be, but I've always stuck by my principles as an MP. That's why I'm described often as an independent-minded campaigning MP. It's why I was returned at the last election with the biggest increased majority of any single sitting MP in the country, the best reference an MP can possibly hope for. You can't get a better reference than that from your constituents.
So how is it, after we've had a Conservative mayor for 2 terms and a Conservative government, pulling the strings, controlling, doing what they can with London, that it doesn't look as if you're breaking through, or there's a record that the voters are reacting to?
I don't agree with that. I mean, the only thing that you have to go by are a couple of opinion polls that are published. I'm on the ground talking to voters day in, day out, every second of every minute. I do public meetings which are standing room only in every part of London, and the reaction is overwhelmingly positive. It is true that people have not engaged with this campaign until quite recently, but that's not surprising. We had
and that was the problem, was it? Well, we'll come on to does there lie the reason for the changes? We'll come on to that in a moment, but this point as well, because Boris Johnson's been on the campaign trail with you a lot. Is this a kind of nightmare scenario here, really, that you've got to follow him as a personality, but you don't have he hasn't got a particularly good record to defend that you can point to?
He's certainly got a big personality, but he's unique in British politics. There is no one in British politics from left to right who is like Boris Johnson. You had a few clips there, but I mean, I've been out on the trail with him many, many times. He is swamped. He's one of those figures. There's no one else in British politics who has that reaction. Anyone who chooses to stand as Boris Mark II is heading for a crash. So,
so that's doing that. But in terms of the record then, so the problem is, presumably, unless you're going to tell me that, 5,000 affordable homes, the sum total for a capital with a population growing 100,000, is good enough. Is it good enough last year?
If you look at his record in the whole, it is a good record. He was elected in 2008 at a time when the recession clouds were hovering over London. He imbued the world with a confidence in London, which London badly needed at the time.
Fine,
I don't think anyone else could have done that.
But what about that? When you come, if you were inheriting this, though, the last year of Mayoralty, how do you account for just 5,000 affordable homes? A mayor that's been in for 8 years, a Conservative government.
I'm not going to pretend that enough homes have been built, but equally, he built more homes than Ken Livingstone did. He built more social homes than Ken Livingstone did. This is not a Tory thing.
Not social homes, council homes.
The reality is we have a housing crisis in London. The gap between supply and demand has got so wide now that you could be earning a really significant salary and have no chance of getting on the housing ladder.
I didn't want to interrupt there, but why on earth, given what we've just said, would anyone vote and believe that the Conservative candidate here was going to be the person who was going to come up with the answers? Because They've seen many years with a rising population, and you haven't risen to it.
People will look at my manifesto, I hope. I'm incredibly proud of it. It is a comprehensive plan for tackling the big challenges that London faces. It's not just the one page that was shown on the clip just there. It is a detailed, costed, bulletproof manifesto. And people will look, I hope, at my record. I don't make promises that I can't keep. That's why I've done well as a constituency MP. It's why I've managed to get a good deal from government over the last 6 years for my constituents.
I wonder whether you'll accept 2 points you make there, whether you'll accept...
But I need to finish this one, if you don't mind.
All
It's
right,
not in politics. We're 4 days away from an election. People are not going to judge either me or Sadiq Khan or anyone else on the back of our promises. Promises are cheap in politics, and politics is a world littered with broken promises. But they will look at our records, and I encourage anyone to look at my record and compare it with that of any of my rivals in this race.
Okay.
It is a good record. It is a record of delivery, of doing what I say I'm going to do.
Well, this involves your record and also involves Boris Johnson. How is it, I mean, you want to be judged on your record, that you completely failed or have failed to persuade the Chancellor of the government to deprive London Transport of £2.8 billion, to take it away from its budget at this time for investment, for improvements for the tube net? How did you do that?
I've successfully challenged the Chancellor's attempt to remove almost £1 billion from the Met's budget.
Let's just...
But I
haven't asked you about the police. Let's just talk about the Transport, because you've made that a very big thrust of your campaign. How have you not, given your record and that you're meant to be someone that's going to be able to influence government, how did you not stop them removing £2.8 billion over the next 4 years from the transport budget?
I'm not going to sit here and say that as a backbench MP in Richmond Park and North Kingston I've won every battle on behalf of London. Obviously I haven't. I'm not controlling government. But I've won
you've lost that one, though.
I've won some really significant battles for London, not least protecting the police budget.
But on that one, you know how fundamentally...
A campaign where Sadiq Khan was nowhere to be seen. On transport, I have pledged, as your clip just showed, I've pledged to protect the transport budget. It makes that pledge even more important. Yes, Transport for London has been cut. That is why we cannot afford a £2 billion fares offer for London. If we did, it would decimate the transport budget. London would grind to a standstill, and we wouldn't solve the housing crisis.
And I've heard you accept, and of course you know if you're going to be maintaining that investment, you know fares have to go up to pay for it according to the business plan for Transport for London. So you must, here and now, clarify that fares must go up under a Zac Goldsmith.
In any programme or any promise, any manifesto, any action plan for London, you have a set of priorities. My number one priority is to protect the transport budget. If I don't protect the transport budget, London will grind to a standstill. Human beings travelling on the tube already today
we know that.
are living, well, most people don't know that, are experiencing conditions that would be illegal for farm animals.
We know you might want to protect the budget, but you can only protect it, can you? For the reasons I've given you about the money that's been withdrawn from you.
After protecting the budget, which is the overwhelming priority, that is the commitment I've made. Even if I do protect that budget, incidentally, it's still not big enough. Yeah. But after protecting that budget, I will bear down on costs at every opportunity, and I will hunt for those inefficiencies in TfL, of which, of course, there are many. But I cannot give you a fares promise now. I can't do that because I don't have sight of all the books. I don't know where things are going to be in 3 or 4 years' time. So you know that it's possible under Zac Goldsmith, because you're going to be a very honest politician to everyone, that it's possible that these fares are going to go up, aren't they? That's why I haven't made it. It's possible they're going to have to go up. Anything's possible, which is why I cannot make a pledge on fares. My pledge is to ensure that London keeps moving, and my pledge is to ensure that I'll grow the transport network, because if I do not do that, we won't solve the housing crisis. We might come back. We'll get a chance to talk about the Greenbelt a little bit later, because I know you feel strongly